Okay, alrighty. I think this is finally going to work. Gosh, I tried this like multiple times. Anyway. Hello, everyone. Okay, so this is going to be an interesting thing. This is a director's commentary sort of thing over my film Life with a Cliche-man. I am very excited for you guys to see this and for me to show you kind of the ins and outs of what I was thinking, sort of the certain thought processes of what I was going through when I was making this film. And so what we're going to do 3 different things. And you can stop watching whenever you want, just depending on how much you're interested in kind of like what I've been thinking, or how this kind of thought process goes about. So we're going to start with actually watching the film all the way through and me kind of pointing out some various things, but I won't pause it. I'll just let it play through, and you can react with me. But then after that, I'm going to go through the film and kind of pick out certain places and spots to where we can talk about them, and I will kind of discuss some things I might like, some things I don't like about certain things, and it's gonna be a fun time. Yes, it is. Yeah. So let's go ahead and get on to it. So I have Life with a Cliche-man pulled up, and let's go ahead and start it. Bada bing, bada boom. Yes, I absolutely loved this beginning part, just because like I tried to pull in as much clichéness as I could, just having like every single line be perfect. Like, that's nonsense. And then, like, they lean in for the kiss, but then the logo pops up, and it's all, like, grainy and stuff. And then I have to fade in here, and that's, yeah. Now, I will say, this scene in particular, I'm not a huge fan of, if only for the reason that I had to use a different camera. I didn't exactly know what I was doing at this point. So this is honestly my least favorite scene in the entire film. Just because of various things. I kind of like what I do here with like having it on the screen, because if you couldn't figure it out by just watching, that's not actually on the screen. I actually had them pull up some kind of like channel selector thing that was like all blue or whatnot, and then kind of just green screen it over and make it like weird.
They can't cancel my
Now the transition coming up here,
it's my
yeah.
bloodline.
Interesting flavor presents, and then just, and then I fade it in. I do kind of like doing that. That is kind of fun. Yeah, and then, oh no, who is that? The title, and then he comes in front of the title, and it's
sorry about that.
The big reveal. Oh, it's the character.
Time to make things.
And then my worst shot in the film.
Stop, you villain!
Yeah.
What? You heard me.
Oh,
You're a
man.
villain. You get pleasure by.
I would say
seeing
pay
other
attention
people
to
suffer.
the bullied character, but that doesn't really work.
Are you trying to pick a fight, punk?
Trying to pick a fight,
You need to stop this. You're hurting people,
man.
and that's not okay. If you
I
keep
will
this
say
up,
that
there will
for
be
the most
nobody
part,
to save me
a
from
lot
that,
of the
genius.
actors that I use for this film are decent enough, and I really tried to bring out emotion in certain places, like kind of right here. But as you can kind of tell, I mean, the actors are good, but there's always like something that you're like, oh, I wish I could have brought that a little more. Like, I wish I could have done a little more with that, bring out a little more emotion. Just it's missing. It's still missing something. And of course, some characters are awkward and stuff. Look at Michael's hair in that shot.
Words, eh?
You can kind of see it. There
really
is
help
a
you
dead
out, you know?
pixel in the camera,
I'm
and
sorry.
I see it
come on,
every
sure you
time,
can.
but it's just a red
Follow me.
pixel
I'll show
just
you.
in the middle of nowhere. And I can't remember exactly why that was there. But anyway, it should be gone after this point. And then fade in this kind of fun music into the classroom. All of the different takes that we did for this were so funny. Oh my gosh.
Michael, for the last time, will you please pay attention?
We had to write all of those different math problems out. Actually, it was mostly me, but one of those I think it's called the Hero's Theorem or something. It's based off some guy. Anyway, that scene right there was actually filmed at 2 different dates because the teacher character and Michael and Sarah were not able to meet at the same time, so I actually had to film those on 2 different dates. Yes, and then halfway through we get to this ultra serious point that I actually really like for various reasons, and like how Michael's eyes are getting cut off right now.
Enough, you villain!
Enough, you villain!
What have I
told you about bullying?
What? But I'm not.
He's so serious.
Don't try to fool me.
I honestly like quoting it sometimes, just because it's so funny, and I've heard it so many times, it's just kind of ingrained in my mind.
Release the student.
And I will not harm you.
Michael, stop!
Oh my goodness.
He's not trying to
So
bully
what's
anyone.
interesting about this scene, and you might have picked up on it when you saw it the first time, but basically what's happening here is that Michael is trying to be his cliche self.
Michael,
And by doing so, whenever he
You
sees
don't-
the
you
scene
don't
of a
understand.
bully character
Bruce-
next to
Bruce
a
isn't trying to bully
nerd-ish
anyone.
character, then he assumes them to be bullying, even if in this situation he's not. Going to possibly slap her there. He's not actually, but just for dramatic effect. Yes.
All right. Time to make things right.
Time to make things right.
Don't worry. This time, I understand.
Yeah, but now that Sarah's kind of pointed it out to him, he finally understands, like, okay, I actually understand what's going on here. He's not trying to be a bully anymore. He's redeeming himself, which he can actually understand in terms of a cliche person's eyes, which is really interesting.
I didn't know what it did to you. And
Now, this scene right
I
here, we
hope
did
you
have
know
to
that
film
I
multiple
didn't mean to harm
times,
you in any way.
but this
I
was the most emotional that this
just like
actor
that
could have
feeling
gotten.
so much.
And if
And
you were there,
I know
like,
that it's
after
wrong,
he
I
did
can't do
it,
it anymore.
we were just
I
all
can't
sitting in silence,
More
like,
of my actions.
oh,
What I'm really trying to say is just
whoa,
sorry.
dude. So it was pretty nice. Now you may be wondering, why is there a different bully character? Or maybe you might not. So the reason for that is that the original bullied character, the actor's name is Kinsey, I believe, she was not able to be there because of family matters,
Hey,
unfortunately.
I'm still mad at you.
And I'll explain why I'm
Bruce,
disappointed in
and
that later, because
sorry.
there is actually plot relevance to her being there,
Did he
and it's
just
really
apologize?
interesting.
Hey, don't get used to it.
So
pal.
yeah. And there are various things that happen. I just realized the dead pixel's still there. Oh jeez. And hey, cameo! Woo! And she's another helper of mine. She's actually carrying around my water bottle, so that's kind of funny. And then Bruce kind of giving a little wisdom or advice. What? I'm not falling in love.
I'm not an idiot. You've been with them all day. It's obvious.
Now, something that some people might have picked up by now, although Michael is supposed to be the kind of cliche. I love this ending. And it's so fun to kind of see like the little images, and you can also see like these are all bloopers basically of the various characters and people that were helping out. And then just other various scenes. And then there's me, and I'm like, see ya. Yeah, so yeah, that was Life with a Cliche-man. Ending thoughts just for now for you guys. I enjoyed my time working on it. I do think there was a lot of things that could have been done better if I had more time, was able to reshoot some things. Maybe sometimes find some better actors, but honestly, these guys did a pretty decent job. And obviously scheduling is always an issue, especially when everyone that you're trying to look for is in some kind of school and whatnot. But yeah, otherwise. So now we're going to move on to part 2, which is going to be kind of me picking out different things. There is going to be one other thing that I'm going to do afterwards, that's going to take a little bit longer, just because I'm going to go through like all of the world building, I should say, which is weird because you wouldn't think that for this film I would have world building, so to speak, but I do, and that's what's really interesting. I like with this film, I am just skimming the surface, just scratching the surface of what is happening in this world. Uh, because okay, when you think about it, why and how in the world is Michael in the real world? And I have an answer for that, which I will get into later. So if you want to do that, stick around. But otherwise, I'm going to go into more specific things throughout the film. So we're just going to go back and kind of pause at various areas. So obviously here, I wish I didn't have the title here, but that's okay. Obviously, this is kind of a... I mean, I had to do this. I found the heart. I found the things behind it, and then I layered on something. One thing that you might not have picked up the first time that you watched this film is actually going at 12 frames per second, as well as kind of a shrunken 4:3 perspective. Now, something you might realize is that, you know, Kinsey over here, playing the character Molly, she does appear later, which is important. I just loved filming this. When I filmed this it was one of the most fun times that we had together, because I just pulled out as much cliche-ness as possible into one 30-second clip, which is just amazing. Like, you're the prettiest girl in the school. I love that. Michael, Molly, and then they lean in for a kiss. Like, it's so cliche, and I love it. And then just the tune in next time. Okay. In universe, I think this was actually supposed to be like a 20-minute, episode of like a sitcom or something. But this might have been just like a last minute kind of thing. Or like a last minute in terms of the show. Like they go to commercial and then they come back and then there's like only 30 seconds left in the actual show. I doubt that would actually happen in real life, but that's what's happening here. Anyway. So then we are introduced to the sister character, which I forget her name. Shoot. Give me a second. I should have had the script pulled up the whole time. No. Anna. That's her name. So the older sister's name is Anna. And although she only has like 3 lines in the whole thing, that's really because she's just kind of she's supposed to be there to kind of introduce and to introduce Sarah and to kind of be not a parallel, but an opposite of her, whereas Anna is kind of this like super emotional person. I mean, you can see her crying in this frame here. Sarah is still kind of reserved and isn't really reacting to it, and they kind of comment on that back and forth, and she's like, yeah, it's really emotional. Yeah.
I thought you liked the show.
And she says, yeah, and she says something really interesting there, is that this is actually her favorite show, which is so interesting because, she's not reacting to it as most people would. And yet this is her favorite show, but she doesn't know why. Or maybe she does. Like, my thinking is that she sees kind of the old cliche-ness of it all and the extreme emotions that the characters bring out and whatnot. And she's kind of attracted to that in a way where she almost strives to have that kind of emotional kind of thing, which is honestly something that I struggle with sometimes. Sometimes I wish I was more emotional, but yeah. And of course you could recognize this is obviously my voice here. So that's fun.
Imagine the characters anymore. It's as if they've disappeared from my mind entirely. The show will continue.
Now, this is something important. A lot of people, when they'll see this for the first time, they kind of gloss over this. But what this narrator says right here is actually very important to the overall world and plot. I'll go ahead and read it to you just again here. We regret to inform you that the show Love Finds a Way is hereby canceled due to complications with the writer of the show. Quote, I just can't imagine the characters anymore. It's as if they have disappeared from my mind entirely. And then he goes on to do some other stuff. But the important thing is that quote right there. I can't imagine the characters. It's as if they've disappeared from my mind. This is how Michael comes to be. The way that I kind of interpret how in this universe the fictional world works is basically we are able to kind of create and then peer into various fictional worlds. But then once you create them and peer into them, say if one of the characters were to leave that fictional world, at that point you wouldn't be able to peer in and see that character anymore. Therefore, it would to us it would be as if we just can't imagine them anymore for whatever reason. So this is literally what happens with Michael, as well as his family, actually. They basically get transported out of the fictional world for a specific reason. And then because of that, the author of the show can't imagine them anymore. And therefore, it's whatever. It's gone. So that's something that's really interesting. And something that, like, isn't really shown much. So I'll kind of skip ahead. Well, no, I'll let it play. So yeah, Anna kind of gets really emotional about it and whatnot. And something that's interesting. Okay. So right there, did you see how right here, Sarah is actually reaching for something? So she is actually reaching, you can see, for her notebook. And because originally this shot was supposed to go on for a little bit longer. She was supposed to kind of take her notebook and kind of write in it, almost furiously. And the idea was that whenever she gets upset about something, she kind of writes in her journal, so to speak. It's kind of just her sort of introverted way on how to deal with different things. But the reason why I don't actually show her writing in it is because when I originally did that and showed it to people, they had thought that the entire film from this point on was fan fiction. And I was like, I didn't even realize that, but I was like, oh, duh, of course that would make you think that. And I was like, oh my gosh, because like the entire plot is basically ruined because people are misinterpreting that she is writing because she's furious instead of she is writing fan fiction, which is honestly a fantastic theory if I were to put that in, which is great. Anyway, so then, yeah, there's that transition and I kind of like it. So this is the next day and she's kind of contemplating like, oh, it's still gone. She's reading this, she's actually reading a science magazine. And here we are with Bruce and what's her name? Do I have a name for her actually? I don't think I do. Oh dear. Oh no, I do. Right. So in my original writing of the script, the bullied character was actually supposed to be a guy named Nelson, because he was supposed to be like a nerd kind of thing. But I changed it to being the girl character, which you could probably, I don't know, maybe Nellie could be the name. But here's another plot point. So as you can see, coming up, well, actually, I'll get to it when we get there. And then we have, the classic, bump into the shoulder, and he turns around and he's like, oh, sorry about that.
Excuse me.
Yeah. So what happened there is basically Michael had seen he saw this bully thing happen, and he was like, "All right, got to be the hero." So I went in, and now I'm going to introduce you to the worst shot in the entire film. Oh boy, and I'll basically tell you why. So let's watch this.
Time to make things right.
Stop, you villain!
Yeah. So that was an attempt at being cool that failed miserably. Now, I'm not going to actually pull up the actual shot because I'm not exactly sure where that's located, and it would take a little bit. But basically, I had taken that shot multiple times. So what I did, or what my original goal was, to start here and then physically move the camera to here, and then in post basically speed that up and give it a lot of blur as to give it this kind of effect of almost like an anime type thing, like "Stop, you villain," and having it be like this awesome and epic thing that happens, and it was supposed to be really cool. But the problem is that the lens that I was using was made for farther away shots. So I'm wanting to say, like, I always had to be filming like across the room in order for these shots to line up correctly. So in order for me to go go a little bit close and then all the way back up, it took like a good 5 seconds at least to get into the right position. And so what I had to do was I basically had to take two separate points in where they say those lines, and then kind of just have this horrible fade slide transition and whatnot. And every time I see it, it's always like, oh man, I could have done so much better with that. I should have just done something normal and stuff, but oh well. Anyway, moving on. Stop, you villain! Yeah, okay. So I love the line there because Bruce is a bully. He is a bully, but he's not a cliche bully. That's what's important here. He's not a cliche bully. What he is just he's just a normal bully. He wants money from people. He tries to make deals with them. Tries to just pressure them into doing things that he wants. Otherwise, they're gonna get that kind of thing. But then when he, in the real world, like if you were to see this random kid that you've literally never seen before in your life, come up to you and say, "Stop, you villain," naturally your reaction should be like, "What? Like, who are you?" And that's kind of what's happening here. Even the bullied character is being like, "Wait, who?" So that's kind of fun. So, interesting tidbit about world building again. This will probably be the last one. So, that character right there, the bullied character, is played by the same actor as Molly. That is not a coincidence. And this is what's interesting. Molly is that person, if I didn't make that clear. In other words, Molly also came into the real world with Michael somehow. We don't exactly know how. And I know why, and I know how, and I also know why. But there are various things and reasons as to why that could be. Now, none of those would actually come into fruition, but the basic idea is that originally this was supposed to be kind of a pilot for a series. Or at least that's how it started out. So some of the ideas from the pilot into the series kind of stuck with me. One of those being, what if Molly also came with Michael? And I kind of just put that in as kind of an Easter egg type of thing. Anyway. Oh, yes. The JoJo poses. So yeah, I love that I had him do like these random and just epic poses. And what's great is that I just awkwardly move the camera to here, and he continues to do the pose even when Bruce is just talking with normally. Oh man,
and that's not okay.
If you keep this up,
there'll be nobody to stop or to save you.
Me from what, genius?
yourself.
Now, this is what's interesting. So what's happening here is that basically this is what I told the actor Kevin, that Bruce has heard this all of his life. That, you know, this is a very cliche line, like, you know, if you don't stop this, there'll be nobody left to save you. Well, save me from what? Yourself. Like, and it's supposed to be humorous, obviously, but then he reacts to it. It gets to him. And then he says, just leave me alone. And with that musical cue as well, it kind of shows it kind of shows how, even though Bruce has heard this a million times before, for some reason the conviction or something about this guy telling this to him, it actually affects him, and he actually takes it to heart, which is weird for him. And so he kind of just, I mean, he goes about his way, but he considers it. And this is the point where he kind of considers what he's been doing, which will lead into what happens later on. And then Michael's like, ah, yes. And Sarah's like, oh, wait, that actually worked? She's like genuinely surprised, like, this is crazy. And then Michael's just like, yep, I know, I'm awesome. He's just so cocky.
I don't believe you met.
And then turning into friendly Michael right away. Yeah, so yeah, this is Sarah's first time actually meeting, like, her favorite fictional character of all time in the flesh, and she's like, hi, that kind of thing.
Not much for words, eh? You should try talking more. It can really help you out, you know?
I love that he's so forward about it. He's like, you should try talking more. and she's just like, oh, no.
Oh, come on, sure you can. Follow me. I'll show you.
Oh, man. And then we get into this. So what's interesting about this is that this scene right here was actually supposed to be last. The idea was they were actually running to lunch for Michael to kind of like show her, like, hey, here are the various ways in which you can talk with people and be friendly and stuff like that. And her just kind of being like, yeah, okay, I can kind of say I enjoy hanging around you. That kind of thing. And then this scene was supposed to kind of be like the last of the three, to kind of be like that punchline. But what ended up happening was that you'll notice that there's a monologue after this. And originally that was supposed to be within the shot, but in order to kind of shrink down the time, I had to kind of mix that dialogue into the montage, so to speak. So now we're going to have this special guest of a teacher.
I think she's ever done is probably top 5, maybe.
Okay, also, okay. Little thing. Listen to what Michael is actually talking about in this scene. Hold on.
Top 5, maybe top 6.
Yeah, okay, so he's talking about, like, this, like a pop singer. I forget what it was, like either Cardi B or something. But, like, he's talking about, like, yeah, and she had these, like, great songs and whatnot, and I mean, I have it in bloopers and whatnot, but, oh, man, it's so funny. Another little tidbit before we actually get into the teacher here. Listen for it, but you can actually hear me saying to cue the eraser throw. Because I had to film these two scenes on 2 different days, I did not have the teacher, so I had to actually be the one to throw the eraser at Michael in this shot. So you can actually hear me saying, like, and then I throw it. So listen for that.
Top 5, maybe top 6.
Yeah. So I didn't even realize that until I said that until I put it in post. But you can totally hear me saying like, and so yeah. Then we have the special guest character, and I love that I have this because this random guy that you've never seen before just comes in and has this like weird monologue and whatnot, and then he's gone for the rest of the film. And even Michael's like, who's this guy? And I absolutely adore that scene, specifically for the reason, like, okay, the only reason why I have that scene at all is for just because, and I'm totally serious about that. Like, the teacher character, I was legitimately thinking, like, what if we just have a random scene where this teacher guy comes in, throws an eraser at Michael, and that's it. Like, it happens just because, and it's funny just to like see this random thing happen in the middle of this montage, and it's I think it's pretty funny. Anyway, so there's a little mini plot that happens right here, so pay attention with the girl in the Hogwarts hat.
Now we know what you're thinking.
So
There's no way
so Michael kind of slides in and he's like, hey, what's happening? And then they're all laugh, they're like, oh. And then she's here hanging out with her boyfriend, and then Michael slides in again and he's like, hey, what's happening?
Take a deep breath.
And then the guy's like, no, I'm going to take my girlfriend and go away. And of course, like, this whole time, Sarah is seeing this entire thing go down. Like, she's in the background there and everything.
Go out there, take a deep breath, and start.
And Michael's trying to, like, convince her, like, hey, look, all you need to do is just, like, talk and you'll be fine. And then we get in, and it's so weird that this is, like, literally actually 3:38, 3:39. It's exactly in the halfway point that I start, like, the serious bit of the show. The film. Yeah. So then we have, like, Milo's eyes getting cut off, and it's kind of like a trope and whatnot. And Sarah's like, wait a minute. No, he's not actually being bullied and whatnot. Oh, no. And then this is kind of like a parody off of what he did earlier of, like, doing the point and whatnot. But then, like, it's more serious and in your face.
What have I told you about bullying?
Now, so a little something that I should point out, and as you guys kind of watch this, so the saturation, actually, this is like more a subtle thing, a very subtle thing, but the saturation for everything up until when Michael understands, the saturation's turned down just a little bit to make everything kind of more gray across the board. But once Michael actually understands, the saturation is brought back up, and you'll actually notice that. So then we have this interaction here. Now, as I said before, the reason why Kinsey's not there, or Molly, I guess, is because that she has some family business. So I wanted her to be in this scene, but I wasn't able to. So I have these scenes back and forth and whatnot, and you can see Sarah kind of contemplating with herself, and then she finally, does that. And then we have the room tone. It's all silent. And then... the footstep. I really wanted to put that in there. That took so long to get right.
Michael, you don't understand.
And I really like how the actor does the... Oh dear. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah. It turns out my computer was trying to record on my solid state drive, which only had it had 2 gigabytes left, and recording takes up a lot of space, so it instantly ran out of space after a half hour. Anyway, so back to what I was saying. I really like how this character does this monologue, just because she does bring in a lot of emotion, and even though it's hard for her to talk about it, or even talk at all, a very important thing that I made with the character. Up to this point, she doesn't speak more than a single sentence at a time. This is the first time that we see her speak more than 5 words at once. I think her longest line up to this point was, other than just general mumbling, yeah, it was just, it's actually my favorite. Like 4 words. And then later on, Sarah's like, he left. She says her name. She mumbles for a bit, and that's it. Like, yeah, so Sarah barely speaks at all up until this point. And then she has like an entire paragraph worth of words. And it is so hard for her to even be speaking this much. And there is a good reason why. Anyway, moving on. So yeah, I had to do the whole subtle like, huh? And then saturation.
So proud of
And you'll notice this because, specifically because the things that Michael is wearing, I'll go ahead and rewind it real quick, compared to like here, yeah, in this shot. So the colors are very like a bit muted and whatnot. They look more realistic, but then from here, now they look, oh my goodness. Sorry about that. They look more colorful because
Proud of you.
saturation. Anyway, and then the Sarah's
Alright.
like, "Oh, he's proud
Time to
of
make
me."
things right.
No, Michael.
Don't worry.
Then
This
he
time,
actually
I
understands,
understand.
and I have this like nice music going in the background. Okay, hold on a second. I always love this. Watch Bruce's face. It is so funny to watch because it's supposed to be that he is just like, suspicious. Like, what are you doing? I thought you hated me earlier. But it turns out that he's
I
just
understand.
he's just like furious with him. Like, I don't know what the actor was trying to accomplish there. But I mean, he kind of looks more surprised than anything, I guess, but it's just funny to me that he's just like
Well,
well,
go on.
go on. So instead of actually doing something, he allows the person
As
to
I
do
was
it.
I'm sorry for
So yeah,
about
then there's good old Michael Watney.
everything. I knew what I was doing, but I didn't know what it did
So
to
yeah,
you.
again,
And
this is like the most
I hope you
emotional
know
that
I didn't
maybe
mean
even
harm
this
in any way.
actor has
I-
ever gotten. So
I just like that
although
feeling
the actual
so much.
performance might not be
And
like
I
very
know that it's wrong,
good,
and I can't do
the
it
way that
anymore.
the actor
I
did
think
it was
more of
really
my
emotional
actions.
compared
really
to how
trying
he
to say
is
is
all
just-
the time.
Sorry.
So it was actually really emotional for a lot of people to see that happen.
It's okay. I understand.
And then the one line that character has, and he leaves. Thank you, Micah. You did great. Also, one thing I wanted to point out before we go forwards, in the credits, there is a person that I did not credit, and I super apologize for that. Jace Brandt helped me with this film multiple times, and I have no idea why I forgot to put his name in the credits, but I did, and I super apologize for that, Jace, if you're watching this. I have not been able to go back and fix that. I don't think I will be able to. So I can put it in the description of the video, but that's about it. So sorry. Anyway, moving on. So Michael goes in for the hug because he's like, "Hey!" And Marissa's like, "Wait, no, I still don't like you." Oops.
Hey, I'm still mad at you.
But it's still
I'm
kind of
Bruce,
like
and
this happy thing, and
sorry.
they're actually meeting properly now.
Did
Which
he
is
just
sweet.
apologize?
And then
Hey,
there's the
don't get
classic
used to it,
like
pal.
joke at the end that Michael goes for.
Everybody, Bruce just apologized!
Now what's interesting about this
Apologize!
is that because of
Bruce,
the
just apologize!
fictional world that Michael comes from, at that point right there is where he believes the episode would end, or where he believes the film would end. And I kind of try to make it a bit like that, where Sarah's kind of just laughing as he's going off and stuff, and normally it would kind of end there. But Bruce has something more to say because he is human.
So you really do like him, huh?
And so it's like, and Sarah's being a little
might be
cliche
dumb.
herself
I'm not
for a
you.
good reason.
You've been with him all day. It's obvious.
Really?
I love how she says that. And then she just smiles at it and just, and cut. And exactly with the piano, and I'm so proud of myself for timing that with the piano there. And then going from one piano to another. And then I love how I did like the blue circles and whatnot, going up and showing a bit and then going out. Yeah. Yeah, Kinsey, Kaylee, Jeffrey Smith. These guys were all great. And this is where Jace Branch should be. And then there's me. Nice. So yeah, that was the more kind of in-depth look over the film. So you can see there was a lot of thought that was put into it. But even then, even with all of that, there are still a couple of things that are not shown in this film that were planned for a while. But before I do that, I'm going to check the camera. We're still going, thank goodness. I'm always worried because I can't see what's actually going on, and I'm recording this from my phone, except for the audio, which is coming from this little microphone here. Hello. So yeah, that's fun. Anyway, so now if you wanted to just do that, you can stop the video here. From here on, I am going to be kind of showing you a lot more in-depth look into it. That might take a little more time. Not much, just a couple of details, and going to show you a couple of more interesting documents, so to speak. So here we go. All right, so this is the original document, the original full document, I should say, because there was a couple of rough drafts before this, of the original idea for Cliche-man. And this is going to be very interesting, even for me, kind of looking through this. So first off, you can kind of see here, song list. Wait a minute, what? That's right. Originally, this was going to be a short film musical. It was a crazy idea. It was going to be like 30 minutes long. And I had different songs, like original songs planned out for this and stuff. And the thing was, if I had enough time, and like if this was the only thing I was doing for the entire semester, and then also if schedules would work better and stuff like that, I might have actually been able to do this. Maybe. I'm not too sure. But regardless, this is kind of the original idea that I had. The film was going to be in 5 different acts. There was going to be... And originally, the film was not about Sarah, which is what it is in the current version. Originally, it was only going to be about Michael, and along with a couple of other different kind of conflicts and things that happen. And the kind of whole story that was originally going to happen was how this fictional character, seemingly, comes into the real world and gets introduced to these various things and doesn't really know how, like, he handles them how he has for his entire life, which is cliche, and to be the hero. But that doesn't seem to work. So then, from that point, he's like, okay, well, this isn't working, then what am I supposed to do? This is what I've known for all my life. And so that's kind of the thing. So, Act 1, introduction. Michael goes to school, and we explore the idea of cliches and what they mean and do. Act 2, the conflict. We see the perspective of others and how they view Michael. We also see the repercussions of his actions. Michael then thinks about why he does what he does. In Act 3, the reason, Michael confronts his parents about why he acts the way he does. His parents sit him down and tell him the story of how he was born in the fictional dimension. Act 4, the change. With his newfound knowledge, Michael tries to avoid people. Sarah then comforts him by telling him how he can change, because she was once like him. Act 5, the resolution. Michael now realizes who he is supposed to be. He gets the girl, goes to the dance, there's a reprise of a few songs, and everyone lives happily ever after. So, an important thing to note, and this is a big thing for both this original plot, but this is also true for the final film, and that is what people assume it to be how the story works is that Michael is fictional and has come into the real world, and Sarah is non-fictional, or she has always been in the real world. She was born in the real world, and she meets Michael, a fictional character. When in reality, it's the other way around. That's right. So the idea is that Michael is actually a real non-fictional person. And okay. So yeah, Michael is a real person, and his parents went into the fictional world through means of a crazy occurrence. And then they had a child in the fictional world. Non-fictional parents having a child in a fictional world, thus creating a non-fictional child raised by fictional happenings. And there's a good reason for why that happened, which I'll get into. And then later on in his life, he basically gets transported back to the real world because of other reasons. But then with Sarah, it's kind of the other way around, where she was born as a fictional person, but then got transported to the real world and got adopted actually by real world parents. So she is a fictional character raised by real world parents and real world situations. So it's kind of an interesting parallel. So it does appear on the surface that Michael is fictional and Sarah is non-fictional, but in fact, it is the other way around, which is super interesting. And the way that I kind of define that, so to speak, is that fictional people have a very hard time changing who they are. They have been written in a certain way, and they kind of live their life like that. Now, the reason why then that Sarah is able to change herself later on is because she technically had that in her all along. She just never wanted to bring it out in fear of what it might happen. Whereas with Michael, he is a real person, so he can actually learn from his situations, even if he might act fictional. So the difference between fictional people and non-fictional people, in my eyes, is that fictional people are always set in their ways, and it's very hard for them to change unless there is some cataclysmic thing that happens to them. Whereas with non-fictional people, they can make rational decisions and change who they are on a day-to-day basis if need be. So yeah, so going through this, because that was a big reveal, we do have these 9 songs, and I kind of remember how some of them go. Like Cliche-man was always like, he's a cliche-man with the red necktie. I actually wrote lyrics for it at some point, but yeah. So the idea with the plot in this, if I can kind of remember, in terms of like how the songs would go, is that Michael wakes up and he goes to school as the song Cliche-man plays, and then he gets to school and then he's bored. Bored, oh so bored. I'm just here with my pencil now. I'm so bored, bored out of my mind, and I can't seem to get a grip. That was kind of improvised, but and then later on, he runs into his first love, or not first love, because Molly was his first love, but his first love in this film, which is not Sarah, it's actually Jenny, which is a completely different character. Also, as you can tell, this is a very long document. I'm not going to go through everything, obviously. Maybe I'll make that for a separate video. But this is basically the entire plot of the original film kind of written out. But basically, he falls in love with Jenny, and then as he's kind of in love, doing the kind of thing, he runs into Sarah, drops all her stuff, and then she kind of has like her own little solo of love at first might. which Love at First Might is the kind of the love song of the whole thing. Like, love at first might be a little strange. Love at first might be a little weird. I don't know, something like that. But the idea is like, love. It's supposed to be a play on words of love at first sight. But instead, it talks about love at first might be a little weird, but you eventually grow into it. The fourth song, Our Son, is kind of just, I think, yeah, that's right. It was a flashback or flashover to Michael's parents, how they talk about how their son is so cliche, but he was not born that way, or rather, he's grown into this way and stuff. And also, because of how cliche he is, I think I actually wrote it in here. Let me find it. Song Bully, After Class, Love at First Might. Where's Our Son? Hold on. It's after Love at First Might, isn't it? Non-scripted, Income Sarah, Bully, Love at First Might. Oh yeah, Jenny like breaks up with him immediately, isn't that right? Okay, I think originally I think I had it cut to Michael's parents, and then them like realizing like, oh, I guess it's our turn to sing a song. Let's sing a song about our son, because that's apparently what this film is about. Because they're kind of like aware of what's happening, basically. Then we have the song Bully, which is basically supposed to be a little evil-ish, but for Michael. And it's like, you're a bully, that's who you are, you're a bully, and that's who you'll stay, you're a bully. And it just kind of stuff like that. Just commenting on like, Michael's inconsistencies, not being able to realize like, hey, no, people can change in this world, but he doesn't think that. So he thinks that, if you're a bully, you're going to stay that way. But then when he realizes kind of like, no, this isn't about, I guess this isn't right. I don't know what I'm doing. Why do I act this way? Then he sings the song, Why Am I This Way? Which is basically kind of just a self-reflection song, so to speak. And then we get into the backstory, which is super interesting. This will kind of be the last world building thing that I talk about. But basically, what happens is that Michael's parents originally... So Michael's parents were running a company, and they were doing well, but then because of some kind of fortune thing, I think it was that Michael's grandfather on his mother's side had passed away, and anticipating a good amount of the inheritance, they actually bought into a loan of some sort to make their business bigger. But then they didn't end up getting a lot of the inheritance, and so it was kind of a poor investment. Their company went downhill. They eventually had to close it, pick up some part-time jobs, and they were just basically like really poor. But they still loved each other, which was good. And so they were trying to find a way to work back up, and nothing was working for them. And so they eventually ended up in a dark alley where they found this older woman, this witch, basically. And the witch, through a series of things in Act 3 that I kind of show here, and their names are Rebecca and Jackson, I remember that. The older woman basically talks about how she's like, I can help you. I can give you all the riches in the world. And so she basically talks about, they talk back and forth, and she basically tells them that, hey, I draw power from the fictional dimension, which allows me to change anything that I like about myself, about my belongings and stuff like that. And they basically make an agreement that Rebecca and Jackson, Michael's parents, would be transported to the fictional world, where they would be allowed to have as much wealth as they wanted because they have their non-fictional influence on the fictional world. But then eventually they wanted to come back. Let me think. Hold on. Okay, let me just read an excerpt here. The parents explained that at first it was scary but fun. They had whatever they wanted as long as they acted like a normal couple. That's right, because if in the fictional world you act like something that wouldn't act within the story, then the story kind of kicks you out, and you basically get corrupted in a way, and you effectively die. A few months went by, and they finally decided to have their first child. It was risky, considering how they were still in the fictional world, but they thought it would be worth it. But unfortunately, having a real child in the fictional dimension created some weird side effects. The biggest being how Michael acted. As he grew up, he played with other children around the town, and he began to act like them too. He started acting as if he himself was a fictional character, every now and again singing his own songs, and how music would always play when he did. After a few years, he entered in school. The parents decided they wanted to go back. Every day they tried their best to figure out a way to return, practicing what they had learned over the years. Unfortunately, it wasn't until years after that they discovered a way to bring all of them back to the real, non-fictional dimension. Afterwards, the parents homeschooled Michael in hopes to reinstill some real-world behavior, but unfortunately, most of his habits stayed. So what that's basically saying is they came back to the real world because Michael was becoming more like a fictional character, and they wanted him to be like a real child. So they brought him back. Now, Sarah's deal is... it had something to do with, like, the fictional people also needed help, so the witch went to the fictional dimension and said, hey, I can help you. As long as you give me your child, I can bring him to a different dimension. And she did, brought her to the real world, and then she grew up there. Anyway, so Michael, now knowing that he is cliche because he was born in the fictional world but is in fact a real person, he comes to the realization that, he can change. He can still be who he wants to be. And so eventually, he learns what he needs to learn. And then there's an ultimate reprise of various songs and whatnot that come back. And then everything is good, jolly good, and that's it. And yeah, as you can see, there's a lot of stuff that was put into this. And just in general, like, there's a lot of things. And I told a lot about what had happened here, but there were so many different kind of plot lines and things that I went through in order to come up with the plot that I had today. And, like, I went through this 30-minute musical, and then I rewrote it, and I turned it into a 20-minute sitcom pilot, and then I had to rewrite it again into a 10-minute short film, which eventually turned into a 7-minute short film. And just that entire process is so crazy. Anyway, so yeah. So if you are watching till the very end of this, bless your soul. I understand that I might not be kind of, as energetic as I was in previous videos, but this was kind of more of a long-form discussion. I do want to have somewhat regular videos going up, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, but thank you for watching this far. I really appreciate it. And you can kind of see how all of this thought process goes into the making of, just a simple 7-minute thing. Even though, I didn't have to. I probably could have written a equally as good 7-minute film, but I wanted to do this because I really like this idea and I wanted to get into it. And I don't know, maybe I'll do it again someday. I don't know, maybe. But for now, again, thank you for watching. Look forward to other various videos in the future, including some video essays that I have in the mix. Actually, real quick, hold on. Here we are. Look forward to various things in the future. including various video essays and maybe some other things if I find time, as well as some various videos into making my game, Project Crap. So look forward to those, and as always, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I hope you have a good one of each of those in the coming days and whatnot. And with that being said, I hope you will see me and I will see you, and you will see me or my face or something and whatnot. And with that being said, see ya.